Hey, good morning, mamas. How are you doing this morning? Happy Thursday. I'd like for you to check in this morning, so make a comment to let us know that you are here, and I am going to pose a question for you this morning. I want you to be thinking about how you're doing with our Safer at Home policy. I want you to tell me how it's going in your home. Tell me how it's going in your home. Tell me how you are coping with being the mom, the teacher, the PE coach, the cafeteria worker, and the assistant principal in charge of discipline and truancy. So I want you to do this. I want you to tell me on a scale of 1 to 10 how you're doing. 1 is, I am falling apart. This isn't working. I'm ready to either flee the home or abandon the whole process. I can't cope anymore. Or number 10 is, we're getting the hang of this, and this is not so bad, and I can do this. Okay, so again, on a scale of 1 to 10, tell me how you're doing with the new Safer at Home policy, where you are in charge of all things that have to do with education and parenting of your children. Just give me on a scale of 1 to 10 how that's working for you. And good morning. I see that Kelly is on board and Lauren is there. Hey, good to see you, Lauren, or you can see me anyway. And Cameron, good morning. And I see Olivia has joined us. Hey there. Y'all, so give me those numbers, how you're doing on a scale of 1 to 10. And so Kelly says, so much food is being eaten. Overall, things are going well. Oh, but this is great. I've got to get the rest of that. The school did, you give credit to the school district. They've been very organized. And so, drum roll, please. Kelly is at an 8 or a 9. That's awesome. Good for you. Hey, Katie, welcome. I'm so glad you're here with us. And Stacy, good morning. Y'all tell me how you're doing on a scale of 1 to 10 with our stay at home policy, and how it's going as the teacher for your kids and the parent for your kids, and how those roles are intertwining on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 is we are getting the hang of it. 1 is I'm about to abandon ship. I can't do this anymore. So let me know. That'll kind of help me gauge what's going on out there. Oh, Katie says we're almost to spring break over here. Yes, this is true. We're approaching spring break, and I bet it can't come soon enough. Good morning, Marcy. Breaks never looked so good, did they? Even though you'll be staying at home, it's still okay. All right, so Olivia says you're surviving, between surviving and thriving. And so she says about 6 or 7. And Stacy, 8. Going pretty well. That is awesome to hear. Back to Kelly, getting a good schedule together really helped. You were too flexible at the beginning and it didn't go well. You know, let me tell you, as a veteran teacher, it was always my policy to start the school year pretty strict and pretty tough. And I was a pretty strong disciplinarian in that I needed to get everybody's attention and make sure that I had control of the classroom. And then I could ease up. And because we had developed a rapport and a pattern and a structure, they knew my expectations. And so that was really helpful. You can't be too flexible. And listen, students never appreciated those teachers who were really lax. I mean, they thought for a while this is pretty cool and pretty fun, but when it got down to it, they said, no, we like teachers that tell us what's expected and what to do. And so Cameron says it's about a 7 or an 8. Oh, and you're spending a lot of time cooking and cleaning. Yes, I agree there. I've tried so many new recipes. We have eaten very well, I will say that. And then I'm doing a lot of reading, a lot of studying. And Katie says it depends on the time and the hour of the day. It's going better than the first week. That's good. And I love to hear that the kids know what the schedule is. And so that helps. Knowing helps, and sticking to it. That's hard, isn't it? To be consistent with it. I hope that you're able to also do some fun and enjoyable things as you get outside the house and explore and walk your neighborhood to the degree you're comfortable doing that. Larry and I have made a couple of little road trips, and we went to Pigeon Mountain, which is right near Lafayette, Georgia. And it's this mountain that's just really close to us, and it is beautiful. The view from there is gorgeous. And what I decided to do, welcome Sherry, good to see you joining us. What I decided to do is to take pictures of all the little creatures that I saw, and some beautiful things in nature, and I got really close up. And then I sent them to my grandchildren, Stella and Will, so that they could have it as their nature lesson, and I asked them to identify with as much specificity as possible what each of those was. So instead of saying something's a bug, then figure out what kind it is. Instead of saying it's a flower, what kind is it? And I had pictures of things like moss and other kinds of, various kinds of trees in different stages of growth in spring. And so maybe you can do that with your kids. It was a lot of fun just for Larry and me to do that, and it was a great escape, a great getaway, and we could social distance from people while we were doing it. So I hope you'll consider trying that. All right, so I want us to get into our lesson today, and we're going to back up a little bit and do a quick review on what we talked about last week. So this whole series that I'm doing right now is on correction and what correction means, because correction is under the full heading of discipline. It's in the discipline category. But what happens is when a child misbehaves, sometimes parents go directly to consequences and negative talk and belittling and angry language. And so they go right there instead of these other steps that we need to put into place. So let's review a couple of tools that I shared with last week. First of all, I want us to make sure we get the goal of correction. And the goal is to provide discipline. And that's teaching your children to give them directions that have boundaries. And then get this, sometimes consequences, instead of going straight to consequences. The goal of correcting your children is to see a heart change, because that, when there's been a change of heart, the change of behavior is going to come. And it will be for the right reason. It will be from internal motivation. And so the goal then is to get a heart change. And so it's really important to realize that consequences are necessary for heart change sometimes to take place. And so I'm going over 3 kinds of tools to use in this correction category. Last week we talked about 2 of them. And the first one was using your words. All good correction starts with words. What words are you using to correct your child? Okay, maybe you don't need to tell me all those, because it could be lots of stuff, couldn't it? But what the message you want to convey is that you want correction to come because you've told them to correct, and then they respond because they're going to do the 2 things we know are part of the job description of every child. And I know you know this. Some moms are kind of new with us, and you may not know the answers to these 2, but they are to obey and to honor you. And so the goal then for correction is to use words so that the child will hear you and obey you and honor you. So they obey you by doing it the first time, and they honor you by doing it with the right attitude. And so you then want to say to the child who's doing whatever they're not supposed to be doing, whatever comes under the category of misbehavior, you say, hey, stop that. You don't need to be doing that. What is the rule here about? So you say whatever words are appropriate in that situation for them to stop their behavior. And then you follow up with, I want to use words here, but if words don't work, then we have to go to action. And then action is going to be in one of the next tools that we're going to go over. So you want to start with words. The goal is to change the behavior through words without further consequences. So if they change the behavior, you don't need to punish them. You don't need to take things away from them. So tool number 1 is to use the words. And we did a full lesson on that last week. You can go back and look at that lesson if you haven't seen that. Tool number 2 we did last week also, and it's called Have the Child Take a Break. And remember the purpose of the break. I want y'all to give me feedback on that one. Those who listened to that and who watched that lesson last week, what is the purpose of a break? So give me your comments on that, because sometimes we think when we tell the child to go to your room or sit in the chair or go over there, it is a way to punish them. And that's a misuse of this concept of taking a break. There's a purpose to take a break. And what is it? Let me see your comments. Surely y'all know that one. That we take a break in order to, in fact, I gave you some cue words: to stop and settle down. Stop and settle down. And those can be the cue words you use with your son or your daughter. It is to tell them to stop and settle down. And I'm seeing that you all are responding, and you're saying to reflect, to cool down, to change their heart. Yes, that is the purpose of the settling down. There's that lag time between the time I ask a question and then I get to see your post. So I try to fill in that dead air, and sometimes it takes more filling in than I realize till I get your responses. So the break is designed to help the child, the teenager, the adult to settle down. Sometimes it works in adult relationships too, is somebody starts flying off the handle and getting frustrated and angry, and they just need to take a break and settle down. And so the idea is, let's say your children are having an argument among themselves. The siblings are fighting. And so the purpose is for them to settle down so that you can find a solution to the problem. Because while everybody is at odds and at loose ends, you can't solve the problem. And so I encourage you to do that before you go to solving the problem portion. So because I know this is happening in your homes, because you have kids that they bicker. And so when they are doing this, then you stop and settle down. And you coach and teach your children what you mean when you say settle down. Because sometimes we holler it from the kitchen, hey, y'all settle down in there, don't we? Isn't that what we do? Yep, it's thumbs up. Yep, that's what we do. And this isn't what this means. Stop and settle down is a cue for the children, the teenagers, to go into wherever you've assigned them to go, into the room, into the den, into the porch, into the floor, into their special chair, whatever it is. That's the cue to stop so you can work out the problem. This is not time out. Let's review that. It's not time out. We can do time out for children who are ages 2 and 3. Because that is just doing time. And sometimes time helps the 2-year-old or the 3-year-old to settle down. And so you say you need to sit there, and you sit there for 3 minutes or whatever the time is until you have settled down, and then we can have the conversation. But we don't tell that to an older child. Settle down, and when you're settled, then we can talk about it. and then you come back together, and then you talk about it. As I am continuing to explain this, I'd love to hear feedback about how this worked in your home last week. Those two, using words and having the child take a break. And so while I'm continuing to talk, tell me if you worked on this and how that looked in your home, and see if it was very effective for you. So the key on having the child take a break is the child, the teenager, is the one who determines how long the break is. Now, what we know about physiology is that when we have amped ourselves up into a dither, a frenzy, into an outrage, it takes our bodies at least 15 minutes to come back down. And so sometimes, depending on the degree to which they've gotten out of sorts, then it may take them a while. Olivia is responding, what do you do when they're taking a break and they are raging in their room? Yeah, they haven't had enough time to calm down. Now, it depends on what's happened and what they're raging about and what you've coached them to do once they get into the room. And so let's say that they didn't get their way and there's a temper tantrum. And so then do you just send them quickly and then you don't talk for just a second? Or did you say, okay, here, Sonny, is what's happening here. Now you're going to need to go to your room and settle down here and calm yourself down. And here I suggest you find a book, find a puzzle, have something that is calming to whatever the child is. And Olivia is saying we feel the need to intervene. Yeah, sometimes we do. And sometimes you need to, depending on what the child's doing. Is it harmful? Is it disturbing the rest of the family? Is the baby trying to sleep while the raging is going on? The key is to get them to settle down. Remember, we want to teach kids how to self-soothe. Write those two words down. Self-soothe. Because what we want is for them to figure out the ways to calm down. And so you need to give them a strategy to do that and tell them to go into the room and take the pillow and pound on the pillow if they need to, but they can't destroy furniture. Remember Jesus in the temple? When Jesus went to the temple and he was so angry, he had righteous anger and he flipped those tables. He was so angry. Well, Jesus could do that because that was self-righteous indignation. But Jesus never preached to harm things or to harm people. And so we have to coach the child what to do when they're taking a break. And so if we just send them, then we haven't done the teaching portion, the coaching portion. And so we have to, this is a conversation. And so the conversation is had not in the middle of the moment. The conversation is had today when you say, now you know how yesterday when you flew off the handle and you got so upset and you were raging and you had a temper tantrum, I want to talk about what we're going to do next time. And then you tell them what you're going to do next time and what your expectations are. And then you set the plan in place. And having those activities and things to do to distract, that's what I have to do. If I get upset about something, and we're all kind of dealing with this now with our anxiety for the coronavirus and who's going to get it, and should I go to the grocery store, and do I need to wear a mask, and I've heard these terrible numbers. And so we have to figure out ways to self-soothe, to bring us down off of that emotional high that we're on. And for me, I have to change the channel. I need to get a book. I need to make a phone call. I need to go to the kitchen and cook. I need to have different conversations. See, I have to figure out the things that I need to do. I've seen lots of people working puzzles and doing things that involve their hands, whether it's sewing. Some people are making masks. You see, we need to give a proactive, positive, intentional activity to help them. All right, so tell me what your thoughts are on that. Anybody else tried to use that in your home? Give us some feedback on that, and I'll plug right into that when you do. Or if you've had any other frustrations, please let me know. So he stays till he settles down, And then what the goal is to teach them to come back to you when they've settled down. Because if they are waiting for you to come back to them, and sometimes you may have to do that, but the goal is, here's how it's going to look when you've settled down. And when it looks that way, and when you feel this way, then come back out of your room or come back from that space, and then we're going to talk about the problem. So you see, you coach and teach them how that looks, how it sounds, how it feels. All right, now this is not a one and done. This is one of those where it's going to take some time, and you're going to have to teach, and you're going to have to explain. Well, you know, while you're teaching, this is one of the things, again, I said last week, this is a perfect opportunity for you to practice your parenting skills, to hone in those things you usually don't have time to do. And so you're coaching and teaching, and you're going to have a payoff once we get out of our isolation, if you put into practice these strategies. All right, so now we've talked about those two, using words and having the child take a break. Now we're going to go into consequences. And so let me describe a scenario and see if you have ever felt this kind of exasperation, and you can comment and you can give me those emojis. And so here I can hear some of you saying, I've tried everything with my son. Nothing seems to motivate him. We have taken away almost everything he has. He still doesn't change. We have grounded him. It doesn't faze him. He doesn't care. We don't know what else to do. Is that speaking to anybody out there? Oh, we've all been there when we think we have just exhausted everything we know. Well, sometimes that's true because we don't have a very full toolbox. And so we need more things in the toolbox to help us sort through those problems when we just don't know what else to do. And so I sense frustration with parents who you've gotten to this point where you don't know what else to do. So we're going to look at some strategies for you to put into place. And as I'm talking about the strategies, also keep in mind that we have to back up from a scenario, whatever it was that has this child is just so out of sorts that nothing is working anymore. Then we have to back up a little bit, back up in the chronology of your child's behavior, because you want to dig in and figure out what is the cause of this. What is the cause? Why is this really happening? What are they not being heard? Are they bored? Are they tired? Are they sleepy? Are they not eating well? We go back and figure out all of that. Or is this child just becoming so disrespectful that they are not paying any attention to what you are saying? And see, once you discover which of those is the correct answer, then you back up, and then you have to start from there and then coach forward. And so keep that in mind. But one thing that to keep in mind is if you've tried everything and you're trying to do the same thing with every child, this is something to remember. A strategy that works with one child doesn't necessarily work with another. And so we have to figure out what works with this child. Choosing the best consequence for a particular child is really challenging. And so you need a toolkit of consequences to help you work through the different challenges. And so let's look at some facts of consequences. First of all, number one, consequences are just a part of discipline. Just a part. And the word discipline means to teach. It's what it means. Sometimes we think that means punishing, but it's not. We are disciples of Jesus. We're disciples because we're constantly learning. And that's what we do with children. We're constantly teaching because they're constantly learning. And we forget that. Thank you for those thumbs up and those responses. So let's keep that in mind. Number two, the goal of correction is not justice. Yeah, I'll show him. I'll make him pay for that. He'll not do that again. See, the goal is not that, justice, but it is training. We're training. Because the goal is, once that son or daughter is grown and they're living independently, they have the skills to do that, to cope, to self-soothe, to calm down on their own, to know right from wrong, and to know the consequences of bad behavior. And so the goal is to train. And so training is ongoing. It's just like the marathon runners. They have to keep training. They can't all of a sudden run a race and then expect that 6 months later they're going to run another race if they didn't step foot in their tennis shoes anymore. Thank you for those positive comments. Number 3, discipline requires, here, 2 things, patience and firmness, and then get these 2 words, over time. So discipline requires patience, something that is in great demand, but sometimes we have a short supply of it. So discipline requires patience and firmness over time. Children don't change quickly. So just because today, whatever strategy you're going to implement works, doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. It is an ongoing process, and it's using reminders, and it's using cues, and it's being clear about your expectations for behavior. Does that make sense to you? Clear about expectations for behavior. We all have had experiences that going on to a job, and you show up for the job the first day. Well, you're not just set out just to figure it out. If you do, you maybe have made a bad choice with employment. But usually there's some kind of training manual. There's somebody who is supervising. There's somebody who is walking you through and coaching you on how to do it. And that happens until you can work independently. And this is what we do with our children. We train, and it's ongoing until they master something. Isn't it just the greatest day if you have had expectations perhaps about chores, and you want to teach them to put their dirty clothes in the laundry basket, and then one day you wake up and you think, wow, that's happened for about 2 weeks now. They may have caught on. And that is a hooray. That's yippee. That's awesome, because they've caught on. And remember, it takes us 21 days, 21 efforts at something to actually establish it as a habit. But it's going to take 3 series of that, 3 series of 21 days. So it's going to take almost 3 months in order to make it a part of your lifestyle. You see, it's ongoing. Thank you for those comments. All right, number 4, consequences help clarify for kids the line between right and wrong. Oh, and Katie's responding, the overtime part makes it hard to be patient and stick with it. We would love to see the quick change, that instant change, but it definitely is a victory when they got something over time. Yes, that's the hard part, because that's where we as parents need to adjust our expectations. If we think because we've said it one time and it's going to happen from now and forevermore, then we're going to be disappointed every time, aren't we? Because our expectations haven't been adjusted. It happens in your relationship with your spouse, with your husband, when you need help with some chore, and I know one of them typically is for them to take the trash out or whatever, and they do it this week, but the next 2 weeks they forget, and you have to prompt, and you think, when are they ever going to get this down pat? When is it going to be part of their life? And it's an ongoing kind of frustration, and then you figure out, oh yeah, we need to do reminders. We need to set up his phone so he needs to remember to do that. I need to flag something in the house. I need some kind of cues or reminders. Was what we need to do with our children too. And so adjust your expectations, give the appropriate reminders, and sometimes this is daily until they catch on. And so during this time of staying safe at home and being the teacher, the coach, the disciplinarian, begin your day that way. How about beginning with prayer and plug into prayer? Thank you, Lord, for helping us today to be obedient and to get along with each other. We thank you for that. And we thank you that we're going to live in peace and harmony. Say words like that at the beginning of the day so you set the expectations. And Sarah says, I just want them all to put the laundry in front of the separator. They get mixed up. Yes, yeah, and that's a good thing. You don't want the whites mixed up with the darks and the sheets and the towels and all that. So you're just happy if they just put it in a certain place. All right, let's use that as an example. So to coach them to do that, we're going to practice. And so we're going to role play. We're going to practice. And listen, you can I could get away with doing things like this in classroom with 11th and 12th graders because I could make it funny and humorous and they get it. Using that kind of humor is great. And so we're going to practice, and here you be the one to practice first, and you have to have them catch you whether or not you did it correctly. And so kids love doing that, catching you whether it was right or wrong. And so you give them a bunch of laundry and you say, okay, now let's see if you can go and put it in the right place. And then you're going to time them, you're going to practice, do whatever you need to do, but you have to coach and train and repeat it over and over. Use examples from your own life. Mine are musical examples and singing and in playing the piano. I couldn't just look at a piece of music and go to Mrs. Reimer, my music teacher, every Monday afternoon, and she would show me what to do. And then I couldn't just show up next Monday at 4 o'clock and do the things because I didn't practice them. So every day I had to practice putting my hands on the keyboard and doing the notes and following and reading and practicing 30 minutes every day. And we need to do that with our kids, with whatever you're teaching them to do. It can be honor, it can be obey, it could mean something with chores. Go back and look at your list that we did a couple of weeks ago on things that you value and things that are important, and practice those things. And so that consequences and discipline are going to connect all together once you do that. And so this number 4 is consequences help clarify for kids the line between right or wrong. See, that's what we're doing. This is acceptable and this is not. This is good behavior. This is bad behavior. This is right behavior. This is wrong behavior. Use scripture for any of this that you can locate. Whatever it is you're doing, embed it in their faith as well. And so it helps them to see right from wrong. Number 5, when you think of consequences, think strategy. Okay, so this is where you front load this. You have expectations for this day. What is your strategy for making sure that those expectations are met? You need a strategy. You need to know your discipline plan. You need to know where you're going to fall with punishment, and you need to be on the same page with your husband. This is training ground, and it's collaboration. And while sometimes you have to make it up on the spot, you can be intentional. So you have a strategy. And so you're going to plan consequences that are going to provide the most impact. And so Sarah says they do it correctly. I'm standing there, but surprises happen if I'm not. Maybe it's Brandon. Maybe he's the one. Okay, practice with Brandon. You could have a whole fun scenario with that, with the kids, and figuring out who is the one that's doing it right and who's doing it wrong. Let them each take a turn, and then the family goes in to inspect. And yeah, make that a whole fun family thing. I would love for you to do that and let us know how that works. Okay, this next sentence, this is key. I practice this in when I'm coaching people and in my own personal life. Do proactive. We want to be proactive in everything in our life. That means we're getting ahead of something instead of behind it. And with discipline, here's what it means. Do proactive, not reactive discipline. So here's what consequences do. They send this message: this isn't working, and you can't live this way anymore. That's the message. That's what consequences are going to do. Now, that is the big picture of consequences. The younger the child, now, the more immediate the consequences are going to need to be, because they don't remember. They don't remember that they didn't fill in the blank, brush their teeth or finish their breakfast or whatever. That little ones don't remember that a few hours later. So it has to be immediate. Now, and here's another tip. When children are unresponsive to words or correction, so because remember, we're putting this in order, and if they didn't respond to your words and that didn't work, then this is where you go into action, and that's where the consequences are going to come in. And so we're going to connect privileges and responsibility. And so we're going to look at a toolbox of consequences. And here are the toolbox has 3 things in it: the natural consequence, the logical consequence, and then loss of a privilege. And so I guess that's what we'll do next week. I'm trying to gauge how much time we're going to have each week. I'm trying to hold this to about 30 minutes so you can get back to the other things you need to be doing in your home. So I will just keep this as ongoing. Next week we'll look at natural consequences and logical consequences. So before we leave for the day, please just shoot me another comment on how life is, or what you learned from this today, what question you have. So go ahead and do that right now so I can hear from you, so I'll know how this is resonating. And I'm going to wait for just a minute for your comments. It's good to see some new moms joining us today. I love that we can all be together in this format when some of you aren't able to actually come on Thursday mornings, but you can do this, and that's awesome. If there are other mamas out there that you would like to be a part of this group, let me know. Give me their Facebook information and we'll connect them also. They can also watch this afterwards. I posted on my Facebook page and on the church Facebook page. So please share those. Thank you, Kelly. A great meeting. And she's going to share it with friends. So great, wonderful. I know some are doing watch parties, and I'm not sure how all that works, but if that works and we can bring more people into our wonderful group, then that would be terrific also. So consider doing that, having watch parties and inviting other people to join us. I hope this is helpful. I hope these are the things that you need and that you want during this time. It's kind of scary times right now with this new data they've given us, and it's kind of gut-wrenching, isn't it, when we hear of what might be if we don't stay safe and if we don't stay in, and if we're not washing our hands and protecting our face, and it can be pretty daunting. But if we're staying in and doing the right thing, we're going to be safe, and that's what we want, so we can go back to our normal lives. Don't forget that next week is Holy Week. We will have all the services will be online for Christ Church. I hope you'll join into those. And don't forget to keep up your giving. Sometimes people who are used to going to church and placing that money in the offering plate, you do that, you don't have that opportunity. But I hope you'll consider online giving. That's the way I give, and it's already set up. It comes from my bank account, and it comes out twice a month, and it's taken care of. So I hope you'll consider doing that. Thank you, Katie, for your response. Thank you for this and for sharing your wisdom. Well, I have said before, I love our authors that we're using and the books we're using on Christian parenting, and getting a lot of good information from that. All right, I'll let you mamas go, and I look forward to seeing you next week. I know it's Holy Week, but I'll be glad to do the lesson then, or if we want to take a break and pick back up the next week, I'll do that. Y'all post afterward about whether or not you'll be available, or if we need to skip a week. I'm here for you. Let me know. Bye now.